My backyard has always been a neighborhood favorite, thanks to the oversized pool that practically glows at night and the waterfall feature that looks like it belongs at a resort, but it was the 10-foot saltwater tank built into the side of the pool that really made it special. Because inside that tank lives Bruce, my personal nurse shark. The peace and admiration, however, didn't last long before the HOA showed up, led by their eternally furious president, who stormed into my backyard uninvited like he was staging a raid, waving a clipboard in one hand and a violation notice in the other. He didn't even bother with fake pleasantries, pointing directly at Bruce's tank and declaring, "That is an illegal aquatic installation, and it needs to be removed immediately." Still holding my morning coffee, I gave him the kind of slow, exaggerated blink you reserve for particularly stupid situations and calmly asked how a fish tank could be illegal when the HOA had no authority over backyard modifications that weren't visible from the street. He scoffed, flipping through his binder of bylaws like it was the holy scripture of suburban control, reading off a bizarre combination of infractions: unauthorized animal containment, failure to maintain aesthetic harmony, improper use of recreational space, and my personal favorite, the creation of a quote-unquote hazardous body of water. I asked him if he even knew what kind of shark Bruce was, and without missing a beat he said, "A dangerous one." I corrected him, explaining that Bruce was a nurse shark, completely harmless to people, more likely to bump into someone by accident than actually bite them, and in fact had already been inspected and approved by local animal control months before the tank was installed. That only made him angrier because the HOA prided itself on being stricter than the city, and any homeowner who had the audacity to go directly to municipal authorities was seen as a traitor to their tiny kingdom. Without giving me a chance to finish my coffee, he handed me the violation notice, informing me that I had 72 hours to remove the shark, dismantle the tank and return my backyard to its original approved condition, or else I would face escalating daily fines, loss of community privileges, and referral to the HOA's legal team for further enforcement. I stared down at the ridiculous piece of paper and then back up at the small crowd of neighbors who had gathered near the fence, already whispering and taking pictures, as if they knew this was the start of something legendary. What the HOA didn't realize was that Bruce wasn't just my personal pet, he was the unofficial mascot of the block. My neighbor's kids had named him, the family next door had held their daughter's birthday party beside his tank, and he had become the centerpiece of nearly every weekend gathering we hosted. There was even a neighborhood tradition where, at every summer pool party, Bruce got his own cake, a frozen chunk of seafood tossed into the water while the kids cheered him on. Trying to remove Bruce wasn't just attacking me, it was attacking the single coolest thing our boring suburban block had ever had. I told the HOA president that Bruce wasn't going anywhere, and if they wanted to fight about it, they'd have to do it publicly in front of the whole neighborhood. That's when he made his fatal mistake. He agreed. He left with the smug confidence of a man who thought the rulebook was on his side, but what he didn't understand was that this wasn't just about a shark in a pool. This was about who really controlled the neighborhood, the homeowners who lived here or the petty committee who thought their clipboard gave them the power to crush anything fun. The moment the HOA president left, my phone blew up with messages from neighbors asking if the shark eviction threat was real, and by the end of the day, someone had already set up a group chat titled, "Save Bruce," with nearly every family on the street inside it. That night, I floated in the pool with Bruce circling lazily below, neon lights reflecting off the water, thinking about how ridiculous it was that a fish had accidentally started a revolution. The HOA thought they could bully me into submission with threats and paperwork, but what they didn't understand was that Bruce had become something much bigger than a backyard decoration. He was a symbol of fun, of freedom, and of our right to enjoy our homes however we damn well pleased. By morning, the battle lines were drawn. The HOA wanted Bruce gone. The neighbors wanted Bruce to stay. And I was more than ready to turn this fight into the most ridiculous, over-the-top suburban showdown anyone had ever seen. The morning after our first confrontation, the HOA escalated in exactly the way you'd expect from people who think power comes from clipboards and mass emails. By 8 a.m., the HOA president had fired off a neighborhood-wide urgent community update, warning everyone about the unauthorized aquatic predator lurking in my backyard pool, as if Bruce was some escaped great white stalking the suburbs. The email was pure fear-mongering, calling Bruce a threat to neighborhood safety, especially to small children and pets, conveniently ignoring the fact that Bruce had never left his tank and spent most of his time minding his own business like the lazy bottom dweller he was. They even attached a grainy photo of Bruce, taken from over my fence, his shadowy figure distorted by the water and pool lights, making him look more like a sea monster than a slow-moving nurse shark who could barely be bothered to swim at full speed. But that wasn't enough. By lunchtime they started slipping printed flyers into mailboxes, this time adding the words, "Emergency vote pending" in giant red letters, warning that unless Bruce was removed, they would convene a special meeting to draft new bylaws banning all exotic and dangerous animals. The fear campaign was so cartoonishly over the top, I half expected them to suggest Bruce could learn to walk on land and steal babies out of strollers. The problem for them though was simple. Everyone already knew Bruce. He wasn't some terrifying mystery creature. He was the neighborhood shark, the guy who got a birthday cake every summer and had his own Instagram page run by the teenager 2 houses down. The more they pushed the killer shark next door angle, the more ridiculous they looked, especially when parents started posting photos of their toddlers blowing kisses to Bruce through the glass or videos of kids feeding him bits of squid with tongs at pool parties. The smear campaign failed before it even started, but the HOA wasn't done. Since they couldn't scare the neighbors, they switched to their favorite weapon. Petty violation stacking. Within 24 hours, I had 5 separate violations taped to my front door, each one more desperate than the last. One was for unauthorized aquatic containment infrastructure, which was just HOA speak for "we hate that tank." Another was for excessive decorative lighting, because my underwater LEDs made the pool glow too brightly at night. They even tried to fine me for failure to maintain harmonious backyard aesthetics, as if Bruce was lowering the neighborhood's feng shui. But the one that made me laugh out loud was the charge for unapproved gatherings. According to the HOA, any party involving more than 10 people required advance approval, and since Bruce's last pool party had closer to 30 attendees, they claimed I had violated the sacred peace of suburbia. What they didn't know was that I had been recording everything. Every conversation with the HOA president, every ridiculous letter, even the moment the flyers were stuffed into mailboxes, it was all documented, time-stamped, and backed up to a private cloud account. That evening, I hosted an emergency Save Bruce meeting at my house, complete with pizza, beer, and a full slideshow presentation exposing the HOA's campaign for the ridiculous farce it was. I projected their fear-mongering emails onto the side of the house and played side-by-side footage of the so-called dangerous shark, peacefully floating while kids swam right beside his tank. People laughed, shook their heads, and signed a neighborhood petition right there on the spot, declaring Bruce a protected resident mascot, complete with a hand-drawn certificate created by the neighborhood's self-appointed kids council. But I didn't stop there. The next morning I sent the petition, the videos, and a summary of the HOA's harassment campaign straight to the local news, pitching the story as the HOA who tried to evict a shark. By the time the 6 o'clock news aired, my backyard was on TV, with a reporter standing beside Bruce's tank while half the neighborhood waved from the pool deck behind her. The HOA had hoped to turn the neighbors against me. Instead, they turned themselves into a national punchline. Online comments flooded in, mocking their fear campaign, comparing them to a real-life version of cartoon villains who couldn't handle anyone having fun. The HOA president was furious, calling me at 7 a.m. the next morning to scream about public humiliation and legal repercussions for defamation, to which I calmly replied, "I didn't defame anyone, I just gave them the facts." With the neighborhood solidly on Bruce's side and the HOA flailing for control, I knew we were heading toward an inevitable showdown. But what the HOA still didn't realize was that every ridiculous step they took only gave me more material for the final blow. Bruce wasn't going anywhere. And now the whole country was watching to make sure of it. The HOA thought they were still in control, that if they just piled on enough violations, threatened enough fines, and made enough noise, I would eventually cave and drain Bruce's tank. What they failed to understand is that they didn't just pick a fight with a guy who loves his shark, they picked a fight with someone who lives for payback, and I was about to show them exactly how much damage one homeowner with time, receipts, and community support could do. While they were busy printing more ridiculous violation notices, I had been doing some digging into the HOA itself. It started innocent enough. I requested copies of their budget reports and board meeting minutes under the community's right-to-know clause. What they sent me was a mess: half-complete reports, suspiciously redacted expenses, and enough financial discrepancies to make a forensic accountant pass out. It didn't take long to find out why. The HOA president had been quietly funneling neighborhood funds into personal pet projects, unnecessary consulting fees paid to his own relative, inflated landscaping contracts awarded to his old business partner, and a $3,000 community enrichment retreat that was actually just a spa weekend for the entire board. Pearl Necklace Woman, their self-appointed enforcer, had been quietly issuing fines to specific homeowners she didn't like, only for those funds to mysteriously vanish into a miscellaneous discretionary fund. Even the HOA's own legal team was sketchy, hired through a backdoor deal with the president's golf buddy, charging triple the standard rates for cookie-cutter legal letters I could have written better myself. The more I dug, the uglier it got. This wasn't just an HOA, this was a grift, a suburban slush fund disguised as community governance, and Bruce's tank was just the excuse they were using to flex their authority. I compiled every document, every financial irregularity, and every blatant abuse of power into a beautiful color-coded HOA corruption dossier, complete with screenshots, highlighted contracts, and timestamps. Then I did what any good neighbor would do. I invited the whole block over for a shark movie night, complete with a projector set up beside Bruce's tank. Once everyone was settled in with popcorn and drinks, I surprised them by swapping the opening credits with a PowerPoint presentation titled "Where Did Your HOA Fees Really Go?" Slide after slide, I walked my neighbors through the whole ugly story from fake fines to shady deals, connecting every dollar to the people who had been harassing me about Bruce. The reaction was glorious, gasps, laughter, and a growing, unstoppable fury that united the entire block in a way no HOA meeting ever had. By the end of the night, the neighborhood voted unanimously to call for a special emergency election to remove the entire board. The next day, I filed formal complaints with the state's HOA regulatory body, the county auditor, and because I'm petty, the local news team who had already covered Bruce's story. Within 48 hours, state investigators were at the HOA office, which was literally just a sad room in the clubhouse, seizing files, auditing accounts, and asking some very uncomfortable questions. The HOA president resigned the next morning, blaming personal stress caused by a campaign of slander, but everyone knew the truth. Pearl Necklace Woman tried to rally some support, claiming it was all a smear job, until someone played a recording of her threatening a family over their mailbox color, which had absolutely nothing to do with Bruce and everything to do with her obsession with power. By the end of the week, the HOA was effectively dissolved, its funds frozen, its leadership disgraced, and its authority shattered. Bruce's tank, once considered a crime, became a neighborhood landmark, with kids posing beside it like tourists. The state's final audit report confirmed what we all knew. Over $40,000 of HOA money had been either misused, misappropriated, or outright stolen, all under the leadership of the very people who claimed Bruce was a threat to community values. The HOA had been exposed not as protectors of property value, but as petty thieves with clipboards, and Bruce had swum right through the middle of their scheme like a hero in a made-for-TV movie. The best part? The neighborhood decided to rename the annual summer pool party in Bruce's honor, turning it into the Shark Bash, a massive open-invite celebration with food trucks, games, and of course Bruce's famous seafood birthday cake. The HOA thought they could drown me in paperwork, but they were the ones who sank. All thanks to one harmless shark who just wanted to float in peace while suburban tyrants lost their minds. Bruce wasn't just a pet anymore, he was the shark that sunk the HOA. With the HOA reduced to nothing more than a cautionary tale, the neighborhood didn't just move on, they reinvented itself around the very thing the HOA had tried so hard to erase. Bruce the nurse shark, once the subject of over-the-top fear campaigns and petty violations, became our unofficial neighborhood mascot and the face of our victory. The first official act of our newly HOA-free block was to declare the weekend closest to Bruce's birthday as Shark Fest, a full-blown pool party that stretched across multiple backyards, with Bruce's tank as the heart of it all. We hung a banner over my pool deck reading "Welcome to the Shark Tank" and printed t-shirts featuring Bruce wearing sunglasses, grinning like the king of suburbia. Neighbors who had never even spoken before the HOA war now found themselves planning group cookouts, potlucks, and even a block-wide night swim where every pool on the street was lit up in matching blue and green lights in Bruce's honor. The very same HOA board members who once called Bruce a dangerous predator had either moved away in shame or locked themselves inside, too embarrassed to face the people they had spent years bullying over fence colors and patio furniture. Pearl Necklace Woman's house sold faster than anyone expected, mostly because realtors couldn't resist advertising the property with the tagline "former home of the HOA's least popular member." The HOA president, whose name had once been printed at the bottom of every nasty gram and fine, became a ghost, quietly listing his house and vanishing into the wind, leaving behind nothing but bad memories and overpriced legal letters. With the HOA gone, creativity exploded across the block. Lawns turned into miniature art projects. Some people built elaborate koi ponds, others set up massive garden gnome displays, and one particularly rebellious homeowner installed a 10-foot inflatable pirate ship in their front yard just because they could. Nobody complained. Instead, the neighborhood celebrated its transformation from a sterile, over-regulated zone into a vibrant, quirky community that actually reflected the people who lived there. Real estate listings for our street highlighted freedom as a selling point, boasting no HOA, shark-friendly block, and legendary community parties in bold letters. Far from driving down property values like the HOA claimed Bruce would, demand to live here skyrocketed. Families looking for something more than cookie-cutter subdivisions flocked to our street, eager to live somewhere with personality and a story to tell. Every new homeowner got the same welcome package: a Shark Fest t-shirt, a handwritten invitation to the next party, and a laminated copy of the HOA violation notice that started it all, framed as a historical artifact. Bruce himself became a local celebrity. The neighborhood kids took turns feeding him at every party, and the teenager who ran his Instagram page turned it into a full-on community news feed, mixing shark updates with neighborhood announcements. Bruce's tank got an upgrade too: a new filtration system, upgraded lighting, and a commemorative plaque mounted to the side reading "The shark that sank the HOA." The plaque became a photo spot for visitors, and pretty soon even people from neighboring communities started stopping by just to snap a picture with Bruce, treating our backyard like a roadside attraction. With no HOA to enforce silence, our parties got louder, longer, and more creative. We built a floating bar shaped like a shark fin for the pool, hosted synchronized swimming competitions, and even staged a ridiculous shark court where Bruce, represented by the neighborhood kids, was declared innocent of all charges. The absence of rules didn't lead to chaos, it led to connection. People actually talked to each other instead of sending anonymous complaints. If someone's music was too loud, they got an invitation to the party instead of a passive-aggressive email. When someone wanted to repaint their house bright purple, the neighbors offered to help instead of running to file a complaint. The street felt alive in a way it never had under the HOA's rule. Every 4th of July, Bruce's tank became the center of the biggest celebration on the block, with fireworks reflected in the water while the kids waved sparklers from the pool deck. Even the local news came back to do a follow-up story, calling us the Shark Block and running interviews with neighbors who now described our street as the happiest place they had ever lived. The HOA had spent years trying to create a sense of community through fines and rules, but in the end it was Bruce, a lazy, gentle shark with no interest in HOA politics, who actually brought us together. Without the constant fear of fines and inspections, people started opening up their homes, throwing spontaneous barbecues, and turning their backyards into creative playgrounds where neighbors floated between houses like we were all part of one big, extended family. Bruce became more than a mascot. He was proof that communities thrive when you trust people to live their own lives, instead of policing every blade of grass and paint color. The HOA said Bruce was dangerous. The neighbors said Bruce was family. And now, years later, he still floats lazily in his tank, watching over a street where nobody fears the mailbox, nobody hides from their neighbors, and every backyard party feels like a victory lap. The HOA said I couldn't have a shark in my pool. Now Bruce has his own festival, his own fan club, and his own spot in local history. All because one stubborn fish swam straight through the heart of suburban tyranny and turned our neighborhood into something better.